All right, we are live. It is Sunday Night Live. How is everybody? Good to see you all on this Sunday night. You guys are cracking me up in the chat. Sitting here just, doing the behind the scenes, and I love that you all are just getting along so well. Uncle Al, nice to see you. I've already said hi to Kenny, Paula, Bill, Gil, and yeah, this is gonna be a great interview. Dr. Livingston has not made an appearance yet, but what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and give the intro to him so that when he jumps on, we'll be able to just get right into it. Hey, Dr. Jen. So it was requested that we talk about coffee on the show. And so instead of just me talking about coffee, I thought it would be a really great idea to bring in an expert. And so I have Dr. Charles Livingston is an acquaintance, and I met him at a previous event. I have used Lifeboost Coffee. And so I just reached out to him, and he said he would be very happy to be here on the live. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about his background. He says Dr. Charles has taken 3 companies to 8 figures. In 2 of the companies, including Lifeboost, he was CEO of, and one of them he was partner and CEO. Lifeboost has been his greatest accomplishment and fastest growing business. He has bootstrapped every business he has ever started, and he's been able to grow Lifeboost Coffee with no debt and positive EBITDA. In addition to his outstanding entrepreneurial journey, Dr. Charles Livingston boasts an impressive array of credentials and accomplishments, holding a Doctorate of Chiropractic. Yes, he's one of us. He has leveraged his expertise to positively impact the lives of countless individuals. As a certified nutritionist with a specialty in weight loss, he has helped people achieve their health and wellness goals. The success of his best-selling weight loss course, Fat Loss Factor, has brought transformative change to the lives of many, cementing his position as an authority in the field of health and nutrition. Co-founding the 8-figure supplement company, Perfect Origins, has allowed him to impact the wellness industry on a broader scale. In conclusion, Dr. Charles Livingston's personal journey as a CEO represents an unparalleled testament to the power of perseverance, vision, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. So that's a little bit of his backstory, and I see him here. He is backstage. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to pull him in. And when I bring him up here, we're going to talk about a couple of the accomplishments of Lifeboost Coffee. So here we go. Dr. Charles, how are you?
I'm doing excellent. How are you doing, Dr. Paula?
Turn my volume up. Give me a testing, please.
Testing.
There we go. Okay, sorry, I didn't have my speakers turned on. Hey, it's so good to have you here. Thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. Well, we already have questions going in the chat, but what I want to do is I want to make sure that we get questions answered, but I want to get a lot of the backstory. I want to dig into coffee, as you know, that's why you're here, and talk, just get people educated on coffee, because coffee to me is one of those things, just like eggs and meat. One day it's good for you and the next day it's not. So first of all, I want to also say that with Lifeboost Coffee got 3 awards from Inc. 500, and as the fastest growing, it's the number 1 fastest growing company in the Midwest, right?
Yeah.
And then you had 2 other awards from Inc. 500, correct?
Yeah, we've been on Inc. 500 multiple times, and if you don't know what the Inc. 500 is, it's really the Inc. 5000. Then they take the top 500 out of that, and so it's like I think something like 323,000 businesses apply for this honor, and we ended up being 29 out of all those. That was in 2022. Yeah.
That's amazing. Did you ever think when you started that, suddenly you'd be on one of the most prestigious lists?
No, not at all.
When I read about how you started Lifeboost, when did you start Lifeboost?
It actually started in 2015. It was just a little side hustle I was doing alongside the supplement company. And it just like I didn't really focus on it too much because I was busy with the other company. And then 2019, I pulled on a business partner, and he was just like, if we focus on this, I think it's just going to go nuts. And that's what we did. And it took off like a rocket ship.
That's amazing. I got a little bit of feedback coming on my end. Hold on one second. Turn that off. Is that any better? I wonder, am I good, you guys? Are we still getting feedback? Turn this down a little bit. All right, we'll try that and see how we do. No, not better. Come on.
Tech is great till it's not.
I know, right? Yeah. How close is your mic to your speaker?
My mic is it's the one that's on my computer.
Is it all in one? Okay, yeah. So here's what I've also noticed is that when I'm interviewing people and they're all in one, that's when we get feedback. You don't happen to have a pair of headphones, do you?
I do. Let me
okay. Sorry, you guys. Just a quick pause. Let's go. Yeah. We don't want it to be annoying to you, so yeah, so Jen, yeah, it is me. But if his speaker and his microphone are too close, when I talk, it'll give feedback. So let's see if is that any better?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can definitely hear you. Yeah. Are we better? God, I'm still getting feedback on my end. Cool. Testing. How we doing, guys? Testing. Can you hear me now? I think we did it.
Did we do it?
We did it. I think we did it. Okay, good. I don't hear me anymore. Great. Yes. Paula, you said you can't hear me now, or you can hear me now and there's no feedback. Okay, great. Better. Good. Okay, here we go. So to recap, so you started in 2015 as a side hustle. Now, that's really interesting to me because how does coffee become a side hustle? That's
yeah, it's a great question. It's one of those things that they were taking my supplements. It was just a small farm in Nicaragua. They were taking the supplements and they absolutely loved them. And they wanted to put them in the coffee. And I was like, it's a terrible idea. These are liver supplements, super bitter herbs, would not be good. I was like, but I like coffee. So send me some over and just let me check it out. And
well, how was that how did they even know about your supplements to begin with?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay.
Honestly, I think it was, they had a daughter that went to Indiana University, maybe, which is, I'm in Indiana. So yeah. It was, a couple hours away from me. And I think she was wanting to introduce them to it. And I don't know.
It's always interesting to me how things get started, right? Like that was just a happy accident, and then there are no coincidences. So you're a coffee drinker, and you're a chiropractor, and one of our biggest goals as chiropractors is to get people healthy and well, and coffee is one of those things that I put people on a detox, and I'm like, yeah, unless you're drinking good, high quality, low acid, mold-free coffee. And then like, how will I know? I'm like, it's hard to find. So, which is why it's so good to have you here. So you decided, so this farm that was growing coffee, were they already growing good quality beans, or was that something that you had to talk to them about? Or, how did talk to us about how that unfolded?
Yeah, no, they were already certified organic, which is definitely a step one, right? So that's how it started. I basically created a checklist of what I was looking for in coffee. And one of the things is it needs to be single origin. So in the coffee industry, what happens is they blend beans a lot. Like the majority of coffee is blended beans. It's not single origin. Single origin means it's from a single source, a single area, or a single farm. These were from this small area in Nicaragua. And they were just phenomenal. And so that's one of the things I look for. And what happens is if you blend happens in the conventional coffee industry is they take like specialty high quality beans and they'll mix with inferior beans. And so you can get cross contamination with mold. And then they do that to increase the profit margin, right? So that was like number one. I was like I don't want to drink, cross contaminated beans. If I'm going to drink this, I want something that's purest of the pure. So they already had, when they were talking about single origin and talking all this stuff with me, and it was already certified organic, they already had like 2 steps. And then from there, I created like a 14-point checklist of from farm to cup, what I was looking for in a healthy coffee. And then we trademarked that and called it the Trust Pure process. So now we have a process that we can go to different regions, which we've went to Africa. So we have Lifeboost Africa now, and we have Lifeboost Indonesia, which is a Sumatran blend or Sumatran bean. And they are, so this checklist allows us to hunt for like high quality coffee around the world, not just the small area.
Yeah. So standard. So you actually created the standard by which now all of these other companies or farms are, if they want to be aligned with you, they have to follow.
Yeah.
So is this something where, like in the food industry, where there's the different hierarchies, there's organic, made with organic ingredients, there's natural, you have those tiers of what a certain amount of food has to have a certain percentage of. So when you were saying they could take a good high quality organic coffee and then blend it with inferior beans, can they then still call it organic, or like where does the line go on the blending?
Yeah. So in order to be classified as certified organic by the USDA, both beans would have to be organic. Now that could mean that it's like a lower quality bean, organic bean, which means that it could still be grown in conventional methods, but it could be organic. So in other words, one thing that we really look for is shade grown coffee. And that's a whole other topic that I can talk about in a moment here. But so let's say they do a regular conventional coffee, which is not shade grown. Only 2% of all coffee beans in the world are shade grown. So they could just take a regular organic coffee bean that's not shade grown and blend it with a shade grown bean. And then they could claim it's shade grown, I believe. And both of them organic, they can claim it's organic.
So there's interesting. Yeah. So there is a little bit of fudging there, right? Yeah. But again, to your standard, and because I know that we have people in the chat who are really looking for a good high standard quality. So I want to make sure that we flesh out this information for them, that, with that information, that with your standard, that's not going to happen, right?
Correct.
Yeah. So you talked about shade grown. Yes, I've heard that term. I'm not really sure exactly what that means, but to preface that, so you're saying that you can have 2 organic coffees and one can still be a higher or a lower quality bean. So is that will that take us into the shade grown conversation then? Or is there something else?
Yeah. So, I mean, most coffee. So when you look at the entire coffee world, let me give you this. Coffee is the 3rd most drank beverage in the world. Do you know what number 1 and number 2 are?
I'm going to guess soda and just water.
Water's number 1.
Okay.
Tea is number 2.
Tea. Okay.
Coffee
Okay.
3, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking in the American, is that worldwide, or is that in the American diet? Because I'm thinking, yeah, okay.
In the US, it could be a little bit different.
I'm thinking in the US, we're talking Coke and Pepsi products, but
it very well could be.
Yeah.
Very well could be. So it's the 3rd most drank beverage in the world. In order to have that much coffee, the conventional methods is it's a cash crop. So what do you do to cash crops, right?
Yes.
Spray with pesticides, right?
Yeah.
So, and out of all of that coffee, 3% is organic. And out of all the coffee, only 2% is actually shade grown. And most shade grown, I believe, are also organic. Don't quote me on that. But so you can see that the tier down, right? So you're only dealing with a very small percent of all coffee in the entire world. So most coffees that you see are not going to be organic. They're going to be blends where they take 2 conventional types of coffee beans and they'll blend them together. And it could be like, let's say they'll take it from Africa, like a Yirgacheffe bean, and they'll take one from Colombia and they'll mix them together and make their own blend. So you're getting two different areas, and depending on who you talk to, some people think it's like a recipe, like you would create a food recipe that like it's like unique and cool. Other people, like more health oriented people, I would say are probably going to be more like, okay, you're cross contaminating beans from different regions. You know, I'm more of a purist, and so I want if I'm going to do an Ethiopian bean, like a Yirgacheffe, I want it from a single origin source in that small area. I don't want it blended with Colombian beans or Brazilian beans or anything like that.
So you might take from that same region organic shade grown and blend it with organic non-shade grown, as long as it still falls under your checklist of quality.
Yeah. So my checklist would not allow us to blend beans. That's the
Oh,
major.
Okay. Well, let's establish that. I didn't realize that. Okay. So you're not blending beans, even if it's from the same region.
No,
okay.
The
So
things that,
all your beans are single origin.
Yes. Correct? So all of our signature roasts are single origin. The one that we do espresso is kind of weird and different. We actually we've taken two of our highest quality beans and we have put them together, but we have tested those. So that's part of the process is we third party test for toxins, for 450 different toxins, molds, mycotoxins, heavy metals, acrylamide, glyphosate, bacteria, 450 different things I cannot pronounce.
I think you just sort of rang the bell up to the, we just hit it and rang the bell to the top, because that's one of the biggest concerns that I have. That's one of the biggest questions that I was getting when I set up this interview, was that coffee is so highly toxic. We drink it every single day. And I normally talk about coffee from a mold perspective, because I do a lot of organic acids testing. So a lot of gut testing, gut repair, and most everybody that I test is high in molds and candida. So, I have to tell them, listen, you can't drink coffee. You can't have anything moldy in your diet. We've got to really scale that back. So they get really depressed about that. But, I think we're also designed to think that, it doesn't smell moldy. How can it be moldy? So can you talk a little bit about that? Like and then I definitely want to dig into these other toxins and how they actually get into the beans. So whichever question you want to start with, but I think it's really important that we talk about all of those 450 things that you test for. Clearly there's a reason.
Yeah. So for me, there was a book that I read a while back. It is, have you ever heard of the book, The Four Agreements?
Oh, of course. One of my favorites.
Don Miguel Ruiz, I think is his name.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he came out with another book a while back called The Fifth Agreement. And the Fifth Agreement basically states trust, but be skeptical, right? So even though this coffee is certified organic, those rules under certified organic change depending on probably the things that you already know that happens in the industry. And so they will allow some pesticides to enter in there. So I'm like, okay, I trust that it's certified organic is going to be healthier, but like for me, I want the healthiest possible option. So how do you do that? You trust but verify, right?
Right.
So that's where I started third-party testing the beans for as many toxins as we were able to at the time. And then as we find out more, we start adding those tests into, like glyphosate was a new one that we just added in. I was like, you know what?
So important. Yeah.
Just to make sure we'll go ahead and add that test in.
Yeah. And I always have to really reiterate the fact that, so glyphosate is Roundup. So, and so many people, they hear glyphosate, but they don't know it's Roundup, and they don't even put the pieces together that they have a container of it sitting in their garage, and they probably were out spraying the weeds in the side cracks of the sidewalk, this afternoon. So if you're using glyphosate at home, then we can do all the testing on food we want, but you're just, you're just poisoning yourself at that point. So So when we talk about health and wellness and what Dr. Livingston is doing with this company, is that this is another way to bring you a high quality product to help your health so that you're not continuing to put things in your body or have certain practices that are going to deplete or damage your health. So I want you to recognize that if you're like, oh, great, these are great beans, and you're out spraying your weeds while you're drinking your coffee, well, you're probably, we have to kind of put that perspective into place. So I just wanted to bring that to light. So with the chemicals themselves, I mean, obviously, if they're being grown with pesticides, glyphosate, that's one thing. We know that chemicals are coming from there. But then what happens, compare and contrast for us, let's say conventional beans, they get grown with chemicals, pesticides, or genetically modified. I don't know, are coffee beans genetically modified like just about everything else?
I think they are starting to be, but the majority of them I don't think are.
Okay. So
So
they get adulterated somewhere along the way,
yeah,
then basically.
the one thing I worry about is the runoff because they're spraying, all kinds of stuff.
Sure.
It could be because it's just like it's not a vacuum, right? It's not only coffee in that region. They're growing all kinds of fruits and vegetables and all the flora and fauna around there. And if they're spraying Roundup or glyphosate on other stuff, and it gets into the soil and it trickles down into the water flow, and then it goes on the coffee plants, that stuff happens all the time, right?
Have you ever had to reject a batch?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's good to know. I work with a supplement company that they've had to actually stop making certain supplements because the raw materials kept coming, from their supplier, from their one producer, and they kept coming back contaminated because they third-party test. This is such an important piece of any company, in my opinion, because you're doing your due diligence for the customer rather than just letting it go out there rogue. So and what it does is it creates a higher priced product, but it's a higher quality product. So
Yeah.
third party testing is not a cheap process. And
It
so
is not.
if
Yeah.
you have a company that's going to do this and take those steps, then you have to recognize that you're going to pay for that. So and I don't say that to be like the coffee's too expensive. I'm like, no, like pay for the darn coffee because you're going to get something that's actually going to be much better for you and not be poisonous to you. So so the beans get picked and then they could get contaminated from runoff. Then let's say they go into, how do you end up getting heavy metals? How do you get all of these other chemicals? Are there chemicals that are that is in some roasting processes, not yours, obviously, but just walk us through what happens conventionally, because then I really want to create that contrast and awareness of what your Folgers is doing, like what.
Yeah. So the big thing with like conventional coffees, in order to grow that much coffee, there's a lot of deforestation that happens, right? So it's absolutely destroying the environment down there. Another thing is, it's heavily sprayed, and outside of the US has got some decent regulations on spraying, pesticides and stuff, but outside the US, it's not as regulated. So you also have to, because most coffee is imported, right?
Mm.
Except for a few different ones that are like super duper expensive, like Kona coffee, right? That's from Hawaii. But most coffee is imported, and honestly, the guidelines in the US to get coffee into the US are less strict than they are in Europe. So what happens is a lot of coffee that gets rejected in Europe comes over here, which is
Boy, that
weird,
shocks
right?
me. That really shocks me.
I know. Well, I mean, you always hear
That's
about
like the cosmetic industry, right? Like how many chemicals are allowed in our body care products and cosmetics, but yet are banned in Europe. I mean,
yeah, there's a lot of food over there that's banned that we can have here
yeah. Yeah, I guess we just follow
as
the money,
well.
right?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah. So,
It's the dark side of capitalism, right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So they take these beans, and what's the is your process to get them from farm to cup, is your process different, or are the processes the same, but you just happen to have a better quality product with stricter regulations to get it there?
Some of the process is the same. It's kind of a stair step thing. So I'm like, whenever we go to source, I'm like, these are the things I'm looking for. If you can't get it, we can't use your beans.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, like shade grown is super important to us. And then something else is high elevation grown, and it's got to be a mile above sea level, because it's a more harsh environment up there, and the harsher the environment, the harder it is for mold to grow up there. And it makes the bean, it has to adapt to that environment, and a lot of times, for whatever reason, they're just a higher quality bean. Another thing that we look for is we want to make sure that beans are grown to full maturity, so that they get all the antioxidants in it. And a lot of coffees, they'll pick them before they're fully mature. So those are different things that we look for. And then when you go into the roasting process, we have a proprietary roasting process that helps with the acidity of the bean, because we want a bean that doesn't have a lot of acid in it, so it doesn't hurt people's stomachs. And so for us, that's super duper important, because every day we've got people saying, I can't believe I can drink coffee again. And because I haven't had in 20 years, I've had quite a few of those. I haven't been able to drink coffee in 20 years. I can't believe I can actually drink this.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
The antioxidants, I mean, coffee, again, with the one day it's good, one day it's bad. Usually when it's on the good side of reporting, they talk about the antioxidants. And of course, we do know from studies on plants and organic plants that the more stress they go under, so like you're saying, higher elevation, they go through more stress. And basically the plants have to produce more phytochemicals in order to survive in that stressful environment, where I always say, like, if you're spraying your plants, they become lazy. They don't have to do anything. They're basically like your kids sitting in the basement. They just become lazy, and they don't develop the same level of phytochemicals. So coffee must in general be a pretty resilient plant to develop phytochemicals, even if they're highly sprayed. But then does your coffee then have an even higher level of antioxidants and nutrients in it? Have you been able to test to that level?
That is that's next step to test. Like, I know there are some coffee companies out there, they'll test the antioxidant content. I can't remember if we've tested that or not. Our focus was more getting rid of the toxins. So the next step is to test and then see if we can, I know there are some roasting methods you can, like, increase the antioxidant count as well. Roasting.
Okay.
So it's something. So it is, I haven't tested for it would be the answer, but knowing the way it is grown and that we allow it to grow to full maturity, I would say that I'm confident that it is higher in antioxidants.
Okay. And then if you see the question, well, it's I don't know if it's a question or a statement, but just wanting to address all of these other chemicals in coffee. Are these some of the chemicals that you test for?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And one of the big ones is acrylamide that comes off in the roasting process from like burning anything.
Yeah.
Any type of food, you get acrylamide that comes off of it. So we're very careful on making sure that we're not over roasting the beans or anything like that to cause that.
And of course, acrylamide is, that's in all your fried foods, your processed foods, your fast foods, all of that as well. So really, anything in a frying / roasting process, you can get acrylamide, which is highly, highly toxic. So, let's talk a little bit. You mentioned earlier about the shade grown. So talk to us about why that's so special.
Yeah. So, okay. It's absolutely fantastic for the environment, because the shade provides a canopy for all the migratory birds. So the migratory birds coming down from North America, going to Central and South America, they need a place to go. And when they get into these canopies, they act as natural pesticides. So they eat all the insects and stuff that are eating coffee plants. So it's amazing when you're able to, support an ecosystem and grow, amazing coffee at the same time. So that's pretty special to us to be able to do that. like I said, it's crazy that once I found out it was only like 2% of all coffee in the entire world, I was like completely shocked. I was like, oh my gosh.
That is really interesting. I mean, there's a lot of people on this channel who grow their own food, who are really practicing
Mhm.
permaculture standards for what they grow and how they grow, and so that makes the world of sense. And why more people aren't doing that? Because why wouldn't you use nature to grow nature? It's just
Right.
it's like duh. But I guess is it harder to harvest then with shade grown?
I don't think it would be harder to harvest shade grown. It's harder to harvest, elevation grown, like when it's high in the mountains, because they either have to walk, they have to take mountain bike or like dirt bikes up the hills, or donkeys
Yeah.
to get up the hills. Like some of these areas where we're getting coffee from, I'm seeing they're like, oh, we have to walk, and they walk the beans up, or they walk up to pick them, and they walk them all down. I'm like, oh my
And
god.
that's just the way it is, right?
Yeah, and it's all hand
Yeah.
picked. They pick them by hand, put them in baskets, and
One of our subscribers is a chestnut farmer. So he's been over
okay,
to Italy, and he says same thing over there. They grow chestnuts in the mountains in these villages, and that's how they have to, there's no easy way to harvest the chestnuts, but they're the most delicious chestnuts in the world. So it's just interesting how people grow stuff in the mountains and it grows beautifully, but it's just a harvesting thing. So
yeah.
so how much is all of your coffee then shade grown, or no? Do you get do you get some from both shade
So
and
all of our signature roasts or flavor coffees. I cannot remember, because we do a Lux line, which is like the super special, like micro lot. Like we can only get like a few hundred bags. A couple of those I don't think are shade grown, but those are kind of like the outliers from all of our other coffees.
Mhm.
I would say 95% of what we sell is going to be like everything else besides those special ones, or just for the coffee connoisseurs who are like the sommeliers, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
People who
Coffee
really
sommelier.
truly want to.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely want to talk about best ways to make coffee and roast coffee,
Yeah.
but I want to dig into this nitty gritty before we get into the delicious stuff and talking about mold as well. So, mold. Uh, yeah, I had always heard that it was because of the way the beans were stored, they would become moldy, then the mold would get roasted into the bean. And maybe that's incorrect. So, can you enlighten us on why coffee is so moldy?
Stored in cold, damp areas a lot of times,
Yeah.
right? Um,
Before or after roasting?
so before, after, you need to be careful as well. But so the way, when it goes out, when it's exported out of the country, I believe it has to be tested for molds and things like that. And then after that, it gets to the US, we pick it up from our source, and then so it's already been tested. It has to pass that test to even get to us. Once it gets to us, once we pick up the bags, we test after the roasting. So it's tested before and after, just to make sure.
Okay.
And we will roast, like, we don't want anything to sit on the shelves for a long time. So we will do small batch roasting. So if you order, and sometimes, it takes a little longer to get the order, but it's going to be fresher coffee because we'll roast to order.
Oh, that's great. So you don't do just a ton of roasting and it's all sitting in a warehouse just waiting for
No,
people to order it.
no,
That's
only
outstanding.
small, only a few hundred bags at a time.
Oh, so I would assume that can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I would assume then that when they come here and then you get them, that you're storing them like in temperature, humidity
Yeah.
controlled, like specialty environments like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's and then so that I think again besides all of the chemicals, besides all of the mold, I mean, there's just so many. It's just such a highly toxic crop. So when when you hear coffee's healthy for you, again, usually if you hear coffee's not good for you, oh, it raises blood pressure, or I don't know, whatever thing they want to say. But they never ever, when they say coffee's bad for you, and I'm saying the media, whatever study, and I'm study,
Yeah.
whatever study comes out, is that there's never anything that says because of the toxins on the beans, right? So it's always just something inherent about coffee in general. So, and of course, I don't know that anybody's ever heard any of those reports and gone, "Oh, I better give up coffee now."
Yeah.
Nobody's given it up. But if we can educate people enough to move to a higher quality source, which then brings us to, let's talk about acid. So, we know that we've got all of these toxins in them. But coffee in general is very acidic. And I think most everybody has heard that before. But your coffee is low acid. And so I even confuse myself on pH, right? So it's higher pH, but
Yeah.
low acid. And so the lower the acid, the more detrimental it is going to be for your health. So talk to us a little bit about the acid level in regular coffee, how that compares to yours, and then how, because you said some people are like, "Oh my God, I can drink coffee again." So talk to us about that.
Yeah. So the acid, so there's a bunch of acids in coffee, kind of gives it that tangy flavor. And it's actually, when they're doing the coffee competitions, like one of the ratings is like for the acidity. I think it might be a little bit different than, because you want a little bit, otherwise your bean's going to taste like completely flat. So it's a very tough balance. It's a very fine line, I guess is the best way to say it. To be able to like change the acid level, part of that has to do with the region that the coffee is grown, the maturity level, and the roasting process. There's multiple factors that go into that. And then we'll pH test. And when we pH test, it'll test, I think it was like, don't quote me on this, but it's 27 to 30% less acidic than other beans that we've tested. But yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that we've got a huge gut health problem around, I would probably say globally, but especially in the US. Have you seen the whole niche of gut health has just exploded in the past few years, like absolutely just skyrocketed. And people will have so many food sensitivities and they can't drink this or can't eat that. So like coffee was one of the first things to go. So that's why like being low acid is super important, because people get very cranky if they don't have their coffee.
So true. Uh, so you mentioned, because with the acidity, and again, there's a lot of people on here who grow food. So I think they'll be interested in the plants themselves. So, and of course I am too. I'm always fascinated by, are we talking about the acidity can be affected from the soil to the plant variety, as well as how it's picked, how it's stored, how it's roasted? Like, is there a perfect a path to acidity from the soil to the cup?
Oh man, that's a great question. Yeah, I don't know. It's like I said, this is why we created the checklist. So if we follow our checklist, then we can pretty much, make sure that the coffee is low acid. Now,
Yeah.
when it comes to different regions, that's the next test we'll be running. Is like we have these different regions, and we want to make sure that we know which regions is lower acidic, because it typically, which weird, is like they used to say that the lower, the less elevation that the coffee is grown, the lower the acidity.
It's
But
interesting.
with ours, it's not like that.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm like, I don't know. There's it's some conflicting evidence there on what's being said, because when we test the pH of ours, it's higher, which is better, right? It's
Yeah.
less acidic if it's higher.
So that's what makes me wonder if it's the plant or the soil, like where that information
Yeah.
is coming
I,
from. What did
and
they
it's one of those,
test?
yeah, and it's one of those things. I think they all have something to do with it.
Yeah,
I don't think it's like one thing in particular.
multitude.
Yeah, yeah. It's just like health, like, right? It's a
Yeah,
spectrum.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
our goal
That's
is to
why I'm
go.
like, don't go drinking your coffee while you're spraying your Roundup. So,
Yeah, yeah.
let's let's not offset anything. Campaign Family Compound said that pesticide. He said if rumors are true, pesticide exposure is higher with decaf coffee. So, do you have a thought on that or a knowledge on that?
I mean, I would not doubt it. We do have a decaf. We test it, and we also use Swiss water process for the decaf coffee, which most decaffeinated coffee, they use chemicals, solvents to pull the caffeine out of it. And I think it only gets about 96% when you use a Swiss water process, which I think is just washing the beans over and over and over again until you get the caffeine out. And it has like a 99.1 or 99.9% like ability to pull the caffeine out.
Yeah.
And so we are third party testing those as well to make sure that they do meet the criteria for the same amount of toxins, 450 plus. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's good to know. Yeah. And I know that
And you're certified organic as well.
yeah. Yeah. As long as we hit that certified organic label, I think we're still up leveling, right?
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So we have aflatoxin, ochratoxin have been found in higher amounts in decaf and cause cell mutation, organ toxicity in humans. I think all of these chemicals that we're talking about are just really, really detrimental to your health, carcinogenic, so just paying attention to, and these are all great questions because, you get a bag of beans and it doesn't have these, they're not obligated to post those onto an ingredient label. So you just assume that they're not, right?
Right.
So when we're talking about brewing coffee, let's get into the fun stuff. So how do you take your coffee? What's your favorite way to drink coffee?
Oh, so my personal favorite way, and is actually one of if you're looking for low acid methods, it's probably the best low acid method, and that is cold brewing. I absolutely adore cold brew coffee. Now, I would say that's probably the younger generation's thing. The older generations, they still like that hot cup of coffee in the morning. But yeah, like my mornings are usually cold brew. Like I'll make a big batch and I'll drink it throughout the week. And then I actually flip it. And then the afternoon I'll have hot coffee.
Do you just heat the cold brew? Or do you
No,
make
no.
hot coffee?
I'll either use a French press, a drip, or a pour over type,
Okay.
depending on my mood.
Yeah. Well, and cold brew coffee to me, I think that's why I love cold brew coffee because it and I did not know that to what you're saying is that it's the least amount of acid, but I love that rich caramely cocoa
Yeah.
flavor that you get. Like it's smooth. And it's almost like when you have cold brew, it's almost like you can taste the fats coming off of the bean too. I don't know. There's something.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like you haven't destroyed anything. And so I used to do cold brew a few years ago and I got away from it and I don't know why, but I think you're inspiring me now to go back to cold brew coffee. So yeah.
Yeah,
But
it's my favorite. Yeah.
yeah,
For sure.
I think I'm going to go back to that because I mean, my favorite. I've nailed a recipe. So I do French press. I weigh my coffee,
Yep.
I weigh my grounds, and I weigh my water, and I put it in a French press, and then I press it, and then I do it pour over. Because my acupuncturist years ago, she was like, "Oh, you got to filter all of the silt out of the coffee after you French press it," and I was like, oh my gosh. And she's so right. You still get so much,
A little bit of sediment. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's I mean, I make a great cup of coffee. So, but I think I'm going to go back to that cold brew. That sounds really, really amazing to me. Okay. So black or cream, how do you take it? What do you do?
So my wife loves all of her coffee black. and I like mine with cream.
Okay.
So
And
I'll put like a tablespoon of heavy whipping cream in it,
yeah,
like
I was just
organic
going to
heavy
ask
whipping cream.
to
Yeah.
find the cream, right? Because, oh my God, like half and half or heavy whipping cream is like so good.
Oh
I,
yeah.
I had this conversation on one of my lives a couple of weeks ago because we got to talking about coffee, and I said first of all, because I was drinking half and half in my coffee,
Mhm.
and I went to straight black coffee, and this is where I was telling everybody, I'm like, listen, if you're doing that, you have to become a coffee snob, which means it's like drinking wine. You have to be able to taste the wine. You have to be able to
Yeah.
taste the bean, taste the coffee, get those notes that you really want. And the only way to do that is if you're drinking black coffee. If you understand what your coffee should taste like, then putting something in it makes sense. But if
Yeah.
you're only putting something in it to mask the flavor of the coffee,
Yeah.
or to or
It's
to
true.
taste the hazelnut, cream that probably has all those chemicals in it. Um, so it's just interesting. So I gave up my half and half because I was drinking an ungodly amount of extra calories with it. And that's when I said I became a coffee snob. So yeah, so good black coffee, and then every once in a while I'll throw some heavy creamer in there because that's just like, but there's no replacement for that. You can't replace a heavy cream addiction with almond milk or cashew milk or coconut. It does not work that way.
No, you're getting the richest of the rich, like
Yeah.
flavor in the coffee.
Yeah.
That the
It's heavy
mouthfeel
cream
is
or
like
bust,
perfect.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is. Like
Yeah.
if I go to a coffee shop, like when I'm traveling and they don't have heavy cream, I walk out.
Yeah.
Like, let's do it.
That's great. Which you're only going to find in like a good, bougie craft coffee shop, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, we have a couple more questions here. Most mycotoxins are chemically stable and survive food processing. The study led by Dr. Amelia Ferrer of University of Valencia in Spain, published in the journal Food Control. So, that's a great, hey, Gil, if you have that, I'd love to actually see that study and read that. If you could grab that for me, you can just email that to me. Would be great. Or if you can grab it and throw it in the show notes here, that would be good too.
That's
So
why we third party test.
yes, yeah, yeah, because I mean, it's like forever chemicals that they're going to live everywhere, and these a lot of these chemicals are just going to survive whatever you put them through. So yeah, so the mycotoxins, the other chemicals, those are really just they're gonna survive unless it's really the handling. Like you have to prevent them from forming to begin with, right?
Y- Yes, I'd imagine at a high enough heat that a lot of these toxins will like be destroyed.
Yeah.
Um, just because I mean there's a point where heat will just incinerate anything, right? In the roasting process, and you've got different roasting levels, right? You got your light roast, you got your medium roast, you got your dark roast. Typically, the darker the roast, the lower the acid, and the darker the roast, the less caffeine as well. Um, so with like
Is the
this is
lighter the roast or the darker? Oh, the darker the
the
roast, the less caffeine.
yeah.
Okay. Tell us why that is. I never understood that. Because you get a big bold cup of coffee and you're thinking, oh, I'm getting a jolt of caffeine, but that's not the case. So why is that? And how much difference is there?
It's I would say probably 5 to 10 milligrams per roast. So let's say a light roast could have 90 milligrams, a medium roast could have like 85 milligrams, and a dark roast could have like 80.
Okay.
Instant coffee. That's a great question. Most of it, like, because we're looking at right now, we're looking at doing our own instant coffee, and like there's like off the shelf type stuff out there, but it's not that great. So we're having to do this whole process to do our own beans, like, and it's this huge ordeal that we're trying to figure out and be able to do it in a high quality. Because there's different ways to do instant coffee, and a lot of the ways it's it's just not a good process. So
Yeah.
we're working on that
I appreciate that.
currently.
And I think if you could develop a great instant coffee, a lot of times you're traveling, like you said, if they don't have heavy cream, but sometimes you're hard pressed find a good coffee even. And, the hotel coffee is, I was down in West Virginia, and the hotel coffee, it was worse than hot black water. It was so bad. And so, we had to go in search of a good coffee shop. So, and the best we could find was Starbucks, which, is,
Yeah, I
yeah,
hear you.
so, you know,
So what we
take it
do
for what it is.
now is we have what we call go bags, and they're little coffee tea bags basically. And all you need is
Oh,
hot water, and you can put that in there for 5 minutes, and it acts kind of like a French press.
okay.
And you just let it sit in there for 5 minutes, and just take it out, and you got a perfect cup of coffee.
Oh, that's great to know. Okay, so those are good travelers then.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
and they're just
100%.
called go
They're
bags?
individually packaged. They're called Lifeboost Go. Yeah,
Okay. Oh, that's fantastic. Okay, love that. So that's a good alternative then
yeah.
yeah, okay.
Because we had a
Um,
lot of requests for that, so
yeah,
we're like, okay,
yeah.
so
Well, and so if it's not as big of a process to create the go bags, why wouldn't you just stick with that? Or do people still want to pour the coffee in and see it dissolve? Is it like more of a consumer demand?
yeah, am still trying to figure it out because I think it's not. It's like I think having the bean is the superior form of coffee, right? Grinding your own beans, doing the ritual, that is the
Right.
superior form. Next is like buying it pre-ground. After that, it's like you're getting into, Keurig pods, I guess.
Yeah.
And then after that, you're getting into instant. That's the way I kind of see the tiers. Now you're starting to see some higher quality instants. They're figuring out a better process. I don't know if it's quite there yet, which is why it's taking us forever to bring out an instant coffee. Because unless we're doing it with excellence, like I won't even touch it.
Yeah.
I've tried a lot of instant coffees, and I do not like them. Or-
They usually end up, they have that bitterness, right? And I don't know if that's a, part of the actual
yeah,
acidity, or if it's just like it's just got bitter in the process, right?
yeah,
So can it taste bitter without actually being acidic?
yeah, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
sometimes I see those light roasts and it'll say, um, notes of citrus and something. And as soon as I see citrus, I'm like, nope, like, because I know that's gonna land on my palate
Yeah,
is tasting like almost sharp.
yeah,
And
that's the tang. Yeah, and that's
yeah,
like I
like
said, that's what I call that, like the hipster coffee, because it's the younger generations who are. You go into some of these coffee shops and they're all about like the fancy pour overs and stuff. But if you look at the menu of the coffee, a lot of them are light roasts, and the light roast, they're wanting those citrus notes, and they're wanting to be able to taste the flora and the fauna and the environment. And so it's a whole other coffee culture in
that's so
that.
funny.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
hipster coffee, yeah.
I just
Like, that's so but yeah, it's so true. Like, I want chocolate, cocoa, like, I want those dark,
me
sweet,
too. Yeah.
smooth, right? Yeah, and sometimes that's hard to find, to your point. It's like, "Wait, no, I don't wanna," yeah, I don't want that citrus, that lights keep your light hipster. I'm gonna call that hipster coffee now. Yeah.
So like you'll be able to notice this because you'll see a lot of Ethiopian or Yirgacheffe coffees
Yeah,
in these coffee houses that you go to. And when you see that, then they're really going after the fruity, florally,
yeah.
the tasting notes versus a good dark caramely chocolatey cup of coffee.
Oh, man, you're making me thirsty for some good coffee now.
I have a huge sweet tooth, so
I
the
know.
caramel and chocolate notes really hit just
Yeah.
right.
And I wanted to address, Big Steve's comment about no flavored creamers. I would say, a little bit of half and half or heavy cream and a drop of maple syrup. I mean, that stuff that you buy in the store is like, it's horrible, right? I mean, it's like they put stabilizers
A
in
lot of
them, there's
chemicals, yeah.
chemicals in them. I mean, is there even any real cream? And then some people think that it's better because they're buying, well, I'm buying it's almond milk, it's flavored almond milk, or it's flavored this milk. And it's like, no, you're not doing any better for yourself. So yeah, just get like some good organic heavy cream and throw a little bit of maple syrup in there if you must have that. So that's my opinion. What do you think about that? What's your thought on flavored creamers?
Yeah, like I said, I try to avoid those. We made our own creamer, but we made it unflavored. And that was because like we sell a lot of flavored coffees, and our flavored coffees, like we use a different process than most flavored coffees. Most flavored coffees, they will use artificial flavors, and they will use, in order to get the flavor to stick to the beans, they use propylene glycol.
Oh, God, I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you get
So
your flavors? Talk to us about where you source them and how you flavor your coffee, because you've got some pretty yummy flavors.
yeah, so we use the same exact beans that our signature roasts are. So our light, medium, dark roast that everybody's there. That's the majority of people will order the medium and the dark roast, especially. But we would use a medium or a dark roast, those same beans for the flavored coffees. Most flavored coffees, they use terrible beans because they think that the flavor will cover up the beans.
Yeah. Kind of like
And
the
they
creamer we
use,
talked about.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm like, no, I want to drink something that is like super high quality. So we took the same beans. It's more expensive, but it's just a higher quality. And then we don't use propylene glycol. We switch and we use an alcohol, ethanol, which gives a stickiness to the bean after it evaporates. And then we put the flavors that we use are natural flavors, but they are from plants. So the essential oils, natural essences, organic compounds, from plants for these natural flavors.
They haven't been developed in a chemical
And
lab
yeah,
as yeah, right.
and they don't use chemical solvents to strip that stuff off.
Okay. Have you read the
So
book The Dorito Effect?
I have not. That sounds
Yeah,
interesting.
that would be a really great book for somebody who deals with flavorings. And I'm glad you cleared that up about your flavorings, because one of and part of the reason it's called the Dorito Effect was because he talks about Mark Schatzker, I think is his name, and he talks about like how they flavor Doritos, and that most of the flavorings that you get are well over 100 different chemical compounds that have been
Yeah.
combined to make the one flavor. And so he said that when they created and I don't know if it was the original taco or I can't remember which flavor it was for the Dorito, but he said that in taste testing, people were like, oh, I like this one. And so whatever one that they picked, then what they did was they scaled the flavor back just a little bit, which is what makes you eat more. Because what they figured was that if they didn't give the palate quite what it wanted, it would just continue to eat and eat. So that's part of that addiction in our food
Yeah.
industry. And I was like, I mean, it's fascinating. So
It's
that is a book that you need to read. So
yeah, the rabbit hole is deep on those things for sure. It's
yeah, yeah, for sure. So that's great. So how did you find, I mean, that must have been another process in and of itself to be able to flavor your coffee, but find a high quality company that you could source the flavorings from.
yeah. It was it all takes time.
What was your favorite? What's your favorite flavoring in the whole line?
Oh man, that is I don't even know I can answer that question because I rotate flavors like every week simply because I'm taste testing as I'm drinking it
Yeah.
to make sure that it's up to par. Our most popular ones, we have a top 15. I would say on that list, ironically, pumpkin spice made it for all year round.
Oh
Uh,
wow.
yeah, I
I
was
mean,
like,
but
how
who
does
doesn't
this
love
make
pumpkin
this?
spice? I mean, come on.
I like it in the fall. I can't drink it in the summer. I just
Okay.
feel
Yeah.
it's a mental thing probably.
Well,
But we have
I was on your YouTube channel, which I want to make sure I drop the link here, but I was on your YouTube channel and you have an eggnog flavored coffee. And
yes,
that's one of my favorites is eggnog but only around the holidays. And
yeah.
I actually get this, it's from Whole Foods. It's actually, it's basically blended coconut with some cinnamon and eggnog and
Ooh,
or cinnamon and
yeah,
nutmeg. And it
yeah,
tastes like eggnog. So it's not actually eggnog. And it is so stinking good. So that in coffee is really amazing. So yeah.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
One of the sleepers is we created end of last year. It was a chocolate orange. And I did it because remember those chocolate oranges you would get at Christmas time?
I'm gonna need a minute. Oh,
I forgot that these things do that now.
that's great. I don't think mine does it. I'm on my PC, so yeah, I can't get it to yeah.
But it did.
Yeah, how was it? Did that take off?
phenomenal. Like
Wow.
it is
Wow.
it's got its own cult following, because if you think about the notes in coffee, what you always see on the labels, right? It's always a chocolate note and some type of a citrus note. So I'm like, well, a chocolate orange flavored coffee, it just enhances that. Oh my God, it's so good. Like,
I'm
I've even got
glad.
college students who are
So good.
drinking this and
I'm
they're like,
kind
I
of
can't
like,
believe
I
this is
kind of stopped breathing there for a second. Like my dad used to get he used to get these orange, chocolate covered orange sticks, like candy.
yeah,
And
yeah.
I remember the first time I tasted that and I was like, I'm like, that's a great way to have candy as a parent and have your kids not want to eat it all, was like, and then my mom liked chocolate covered cherries. And I was like,
Yeah,
oh God. So you must have a chocolate cherry coffee. I mean, because that's like
we do. We
the
do.
holy grail of flavors too, right?
I think it's chocolate cherry truffle, maybe.
Yeah.
That's what we call one of our winter flavors. So after the holiday season, we got our, we've got our peppermint mocha, we've got our
Mm.
eggnog latte, we've got our gingerbread latte, the chocolate orange, English butter toffee, I think was one of our newest ones.
Oh, that
And
sounds
then
really good.
after the holidays, and we move into the winter flavors, and that's where we got the raspberry chocolate truffle and the cherry truffle.
Well, I'm gonna not order those because I want you to have enough in stock for everyone else. So I'm gonna sacrifice those flavors and just, I'm gonna let
For the
everyone else.
greater good, right?
Yes, exactly, exactly, yeah. I did love when I lived out I went to chiropractic college out in San Jose, and there was a
Okay.
winery there that made, Cabernet-filled dark chocolate truffles. Now that was
Ooh.
like, wow, was that good? Oh my god, and weren't quite a chocolate-covered cherry, so those I could easily get addicted to, so,
That's
yeah.
cool, yeah. We actually, we do a wine-infused coffee.
Oh, that sounds okay, but is that gonna give you that citrus then flavor or
It's you know what? It's absolutely delicious because it starts with, it tastes like coffee until right at the end, you get just a tiny hint of that wine note, and it
wow,
just works. I don't know why, but I was like, "Oh my gosh." So we soak the beans in wine before we soak them in wine, and then we'll roast them.
wow.
Um
And what kind of wine? Is it just like in a
It's a red blend, yeah,
okay.
I cannot remember off the top of my head. It's a kosher wine. It's a red it was a wild fermented wine that we used.
It's not Manischewitz, is it?
I
I
don't
mean,
think so.
that's up there with like what is it? Boone's Farm or no,
Yeah, no,
I'm
it's not
teasing.
that.
I know you wouldn't stoop that low. I'm teasing.
It's like, I haven't heard that one.
I know. I mean, I guess you could just pour a little bit of wine in your coffee in the morning. That would,
I mean, you could do that.
I
There's
mean,
no
any
alcohol in this one, though. There's no alcohol.
right, okay.
It
Um,
burns off, but it leaves the flavor notes. It's good.
it does sound amazing. I'm just looking at my questions. I think we've pretty much answered all of my questions. Um, is there anything that you want anybody to know with regards to your company, what sets you apart, and why everyone should be moving towards this type of coffee?
Yeah, I would just say this. Like, just remember that your health is on a spectrum, right? Everything, when I view my health, I'm always thinking about how can I get the healthiest possible outcome and eliminate as many toxins as possible. So, and that's always going to be like 3 steps forward, 1 step back, right? As we go. So when you look at coffee, it's got amazing health benefits. Like, you're talking for your brain, for your heart, for your kidneys, everything. There's so many amazing benefits. But at the same time, if you're drinking conventional coffee, you might be still getting some of those benefits, but you're also getting a lot of the toxins. And so what you got to watch out for is a cumulative dose toxicity, right? That
Yeah.
bioaccumulation in your body. So it's not necessarily going, to your favorite coffee shop and just getting a regular cup of coffee. That's not going to really bother you unless you're super sensitive. Um, but it's doing like most people don't have just one cup. It's going to be 4 to 5 cups a day, times 365 days. You're not going to miss your coffee, right? I can't think of the last time I got my
Rarely.
coffee. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, for
Times
real.
like 10 years, and just think
Yeah.
about all those toxins, because you're
Yeah.
literally taking a bunch of coffee beans and concentrating all those into a cup.
Yeah. It's like death
Uh,
by 1,000 cuts, right? I mean,
yeah. Yeah. So
and it is a spectrum. So I totally agree with you on that. And that's, oftentimes I tell people, and this is why I'm so happy that you came on here, because I think so much of what we try to teach people in their health is that to pay attention and control what you can control. And that if people don't know this, then they're just going to continue to go on and drink coffee. But now they can drink coffee, but they can make a better choice around that,
yeah.
and know that they're doing something good for themselves. Because I also think that maybe, people also can get around the whole, they're like, oh, I know coffee's not good for me. I think that there's also that, little bit of a mindset of people, but they're going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
But no, they can walk around and go, no, my coffee's actually really good for me.
Right.
So yeah. Yeah. So I love that, just paying attention and yeah, the multiplication, right, of it. And, every day, every year, 10 years, what does your health look like over that period of time? And, I had a friend of mine that, he passed away a few years ago. He was a smoker, and he got cancer in his tongue,
Ooh.
or, somewhere, somewhere up in here. Right. And he's on his deathbed. He was 55 years old. And he said, I did this to myself, and he said, if I could go back and tell my younger self, I would change it. And he just, he said, don't feel bad for me. I did this to me. So, this is also why I love to have these conversations, because I want people to not get to that place and have to say, I did this to myself, or can you look back at your life and look at, vitality and vibrancy and leaving a legacy to your kids and say, I did that, so you can be in two very different places, but you have to have the information to make those choices. So,
Absolutely. You know better, you do better.
yeah, exactly. So we have this, we have a question for you. We have this ongoing feud on this channel. So Kenny Wood, he is our resident Loves Miracle Whip guy. I love mayo. And so we always have the question, what's it going to be, Miracle Whip or mayo? So
Absolutely neither. Ever since I was a kid, I could do neither of them. I don't know why. I don't know if it's a mouthfeel thing or a taste thing.
the
Like
texture, maybe.
it could be the texture. I could not do either of them. I'd always scrape it off.
That's interesting. I think you're the first person who said neither. That's interesting. I actually heard somebody putting like mayonnaise in their coffee at some point. That might have been a TikTok thing or something from one of the hipsters. I don't know. Yeah. And I guess also real quick before we sign off, I did want to ask you about bulletproof coffee. So we didn't talk about that and putting fats in your coffee. Like, where do you land on that?
I know Dave. He's a cool guy, and he's actually one of the inspirations that started, my journey into coffee, because he was the one who was coming out with all the research that was saying coffee was good for you. So I didn't even start drinking coffee till I was in my 30s.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was a little late to the game, but I started reading all his content he was putting out. And I'm like, holy cow, coffee is really good for you. So I made myself start drinking it, and I fell in love with it. It's probably like as a kid, you don't like beer, then all of a sudden they like beer. I
was gonna say you
I don't like beer.
Thought you liked it, and yeah. So you went to the coffee, yeah.
But yeah, so and that's how I started. It was putting butter on my coffee. I blended up, and I did feel the difference. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So now I moved away from butter, and I moved to heavy whipping cream. Butter, like through the research, supposedly raises cholesterol, and heavy whipping cream doesn't. Heavy whipping cream also has the milk fat globule membrane on it, which has a lot of the immune properties. And heavy whipping cream also is ultra low in lactose, so you don't have it jacking up your stomach or if you're lactose intolerant.
Yeah.
So it kind of slides by, like half and half still has lactose in it, But heavy cream, they've removed like it's almost all gone, so it doesn't really mess with you.
That's really interesting. I'd love to see those studies on the butter versus the milk. And I always tell people too, I'm like, please do not do anything low fat or non-fat, because you start removing those fat molecules.
They replace with sugar.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the sugar, the lactose.
Yeah. Well, and he was
so
using, I think his original discovery was with the yak butter, which, how does that compare to the cow butter that we get, and the quality.
He was telling everybody Kerrygold was back in the day, so I was buying all kinds of Kerrygold. I think they had a shortage at one point because everybody started buying Kerrygold unsalted butter.
And then they got nailed for like having PFAS in the wrapper, but you can't get away from PFAS in wrappers. So it's like, well, yeah, no kidding. I mean, it's in a wrapper with a slippery inside. It's gonna have PFAS in it. So yeah. So well, this is awesome. You guys, there's a link in the show notes to the website. It is a link. It is an affiliate link through me for Lifeboost Coffee. So you can click on that and order it. And Dr. Livingston is kind enough to give you guys 10% off your order when you type in Ruffin10. So thank you. We appreciate you so much. This is really wonderful. And there's also links in the show notes to connect and stay connected to Lifeboost Coffee. So I hope we cross paths again soon. And I just super appreciate you being here for us today.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye, guys.
Okay, bye.